Thanks everyone for joining us this evening for the Foster on Deck, It Really Works webinar. Today's webinar is presented by Jennah Billeter. Jennah is the director of the foster programs at Humane Rescue Alliance in Washington, D.C. and has been with that organization since 2012. I'm really excited about this webinar tonight. So take it away.
All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I'm really excited to talk to you guys about Foster on Deck. I promise that most of the presentation has really cute animal pictures to keep you entertained, because basically we're talking about a spreadsheet, which isn't very exciting, but what it can do for you is really exciting. So if you want to go to the next slide, Rory, that would be great. Or are we going to do the poll? We're going to do the poll, sorry. We want to do a poll.
We're going to do a poll.
Just who's here?
We want to know about you. So what is your role in your organization? Give people a few seconds to respond, and then we'll share the results with everybody. All right, looks like a lot of coordinators, 45% coordinators, 24% management, 12% executive level, 17% fosters and volunteers.
Awesome. All right, so we'll just jump right into it and talk about what On Deck is. It is a live shareable system, and most often in a spreadsheet, that both foster parents and foster team members have access to. On Deck asks for foster parents to provide the foster team with all the information they'll need to match them with animals waiting foster placement. And On Deck asks foster parents to take ownership of letting the foster team know when they are available to foster and what populations of animals are able to welcome into their homes. So a little background, when I first started in Fosterland, we were like kind of just handing animals out to anybody, and there was no process there. And I had a bunch of people emailing me who wanted to foster, and then I had all these animals that I needed to get into foster, and I just was really struggling with a way to like organize all of that information so we could really maximize the use of our foster homes. We could move animals into homes quickly and efficiently. And I came across a webinar, and like 2 slides of the webinar talked about an On Deck system. And I had this like light bulb moment where I was like, oh yeah, we could ask foster parents to tell us what they can do and what animals they want to foster and when they're available to do it. And we came up with the On Deck system for our organization, and has worked really well for us. So we're going to talk about, the next thing we're going to talk about is how it actually works and kind of like the logistics. So if you want to go to the next slide, that'd be great. So what we do is we share a link with our foster parents to a spreadsheet, and they sign up. They tell us who they are and how we can get in touch with them. Tell us the details about their household. We like to know things like, do you have other animals? Do you have little kiddos? Are there a bunch of people? Are you alone? Breed restrictions. Do you share walls with other people? All that good stuff. And then, of course, the most important part is what animals they're willing to foster. And then our team just cross-references the animals that need foster with the people who can take them, and then we make our matches. And then rather than having lengthy exchanges back and forth with people, can you take this animal? No, I can't take this animal, but I can take this. And then us looking for something that matches with what they can take. Basically, we make a match. We've set the expectation with our foster parents that when you are matched, you have 24 hours to come and pick up the animal. So this really allows for efficient placement of animals. And then the foster comes, picks up their foster, and they go home and they start fostering. So that's how On Deck works. And I think we wanted to do another poll, right? And where we're asking who might already have an On Deck system.
Yes, that is right. We're wondering, do you currently have a Foster on Deck program? we'll give people a couple seconds to fill out this poll as well. Excellent. 12% do have a foster on deck program and 88% do not. So for those 88%, so glad that you're with us tonight and hopefully you get some good information.
One of the things I do also want to mention is what on deck isn't. So it should not be a static parking lot where people are just adding their names with no expectation that they are currently available to foster. So one of the things that really makes on deck work is that foster parents understand if they're on there, they're going to be matched with an animal on the date or after the date they say that they're ready to take an animal. And we ask that they maintain their availability. So if they're going to go on vacation, if something comes up and they can't foster, that they actually maintain when they can and can't foster. They maintain as their population availability may change, that they maintain that information. It's not up to the foster program to take care of that stuff. It's up to the foster parent to take care of that information. All right, let's go to slide 4. So I just want to give you guys some examples of what on deck could look like for your organization. So we use Google Sheets, but you can use any type of live sharing mechanism, because I know not all organizations are allowed to use Google products. So, so a live Excel sheet, that kind of stuff would suffice. So this is the original version of our on deck, and it really was just a Google sheet that we gave our foster parents a link to. And you can kind of see, we asked them to give us their availability, when they signed up. We asked them to tell us about their household. We live right next to a county. Our shelter is located right next to a county where there is pretty significant breed restrictions, breed laws where people are not allowed to own pit bulls. So we have to be really careful about placing pit bulls in that jurisdiction. So we ask them if they live in that county. And then we go across and we just ask, do you want a big dog, little dog, old dog, young dog, sick dog, dog with behavior needs, and so on. And then we did, if you look across the bottom, there are tabs for cats, kittens, small animals. And then we had tabs for critical care populations. And what critical care meant was, I am signing up for this population, and I know that if I get contacted about this population, I need to come pretty much immediately to pick up the animals. So we had animals with ringworm, parvo, panleuk, pretty much the really highly infectious diseases. And then also bottle babies that were under about 3 weeks old were also included because they needed to move out of the shelter very quickly. So that's really all that it was. And then you can go to the next one, that's cool. Then we have kind of revamped our on deck, and we now use a Google form that feeds into a spreadsheet. And I cannot take credit for this. I did not do this fanciness. We actually used a grant from Maddie's Fund to work with a developer to help us do all this fancy magical stuff. But I now have an overview sheet where I can see how many people are ready, how many people are almost ready, how many people are inactive. And then the sheet gives us color-coded populations that they're willing to foster, how long they've been waiting, and then household details. So that's what it developed into, but you don't have to be fancy. I think I probably started with just dogs and cats when I first started doing this, and then developed out from there as we refined and learned about the types of populations we needed to get more specific information about. So let's see. One of the things that I want to make sure is, one of the things I learned was I had a bunch of different criteria, and then of course the spreadsheet was like 7 miles long and I couldn't even see all the information. And then I had to really narrow it down to like, what do we really need to know? Like, what are the top 5 to 7 things that we need to know in order to actually match animals with people and have it be a fairly successful match. Because the more criteria you put on there, the more difficult it becomes and more like arduous it becomes to match the person with the animals in need. So I would say keep it simple, and just really critically think about what you absolutely need to know to move an animal into a home. Let's see. All right, we can go to slide 6 and talk about the benefits. So for foster parents, it really makes it clear the animal populations that are available to be fostered. And then we ask for specific household information so that we can have an appropriate placement. Puts control in the hands of the foster parent. So they get to tell us when, how, all of that stuff. They can tell us what supplies they need. All of that stuff is right at their fingertips just by clicking on a link. For the animal welfare organization, it significantly cuts down on time-intensive back and forth communication. Do we get people that say, oops, I forgot to update my information? Of course. So we have to rematch, but we don't have to do that for every single animal. We only have to do it occasionally for about 20% of our animals. So there isn't that lengthy back and forth days of, can you take this animal? I'm not sure if I can take this animal. I can come on Friday. Well, we need you to come on Tuesday, that kind of stuff. It gives you all a clear capacity to care for a particular population of animal, provides ease of coordination between foster staff members. Because it's a shared document, everybody can kind of see what's going on. And I'll talk about that stuff in a little bit more detail in a few slides. And the ease for which you can match animals with people. And then overall, just clear expectations. They're gonna know what population they can potentially match with. I said I wanted an older dog that's 40 pounds or more, and I can't handle any medical issues. So they know what they're gonna get. And we also know then, like, if we have an animal that might be just outside their comfort zone, we can always reach out to them and say, hey, I have Betty, she's 12-year-old pit bull. She needs a daily oral medication. Do you think you could handle that? And if they say yes, then bing, we have a match. Let's see. Known that the foster staff are the ones selecting which animals is placed in which home. So that was a big shift for our foster parents when we switched to On Deck, was the fact that they had to agree to basically be matched with an animal sight unseen, but we would take into consideration all of the things that they had said that they could or could not welcome into their home. And then the other thing is, foster parent understands that if they are on deck and are notified of a match, they have to come pick up the animal. So those are the benefits of On Deck. We can go to the next one. Okay, so using On Deck. So obviously the biggest thing is making matches. So the great thing is that On Deck allows for an overview of all your potential matches. So you can best decide how to use your available foster homes. And just for an example, if you have, someone available to foster and she can either take a large dog or a litter of sick kittens, you can decide where are your shelter resources being stretched the most and which placement option will alleviate that stretch. Or you could say, I already have 20 homes waiting for kittens and only a few homes for large dogs. So you can decide, I'm going to match this person with the large dog that needs to go to foster. Having an overview of animal homes really allows you to prioritize matching. So say you have 12 high energy large dogs that need placement and 10 homes that are able to take that population. You can then look at those 12 dogs and say, these 5 have been here the longest, these 3 are showing really serious deterioration, and that way you can make sure the animals that absolutely really need to go to foster, you're using those homes for those animals. The other thing that we like to do is, you know, if you have 30 cages of kittens and 20 homes available, you can look at how you can maximize those homes, because maybe some of those cages have singletons in them, and you can then safely combine the singletons and maybe move all of those kittens out of the shelter and into homes. So you're opening up and maximizing both your cage space and your foster space. You can align foster availability with the end of hold so that the animal can leave the facility as soon as the hold is over. And in my mind, I think of this as like air traffic control, like you're slotting the planes into all the different runways behind each other. So as soon as that hold is up, things are in place and ready, and that animal can be picked up, and it doesn't have to stay in the shelter for any longer than it needs to. And then the other thing that we really like about On Deck is that it can help determine space and flow of animals. So if you're working with your transport coordinator or partner, you know, you can say, I have 60 homes signed up for kittens 4 to 8 weeks old. Go ahead and pull a bunch of litters of kittens. With the limited admission shelter, you can say, you can look at your On Deck and say, we have 10 homes able to take in small dogs. Yes, we can help you. We can absolutely help you rehome your animal. And for internal space, we often use our matches to help our animal care staff know how many cage spaces they're going to have open by the end of the day, because we know that those animals are moving into foster home. Okay, so the next one for using On Deck. So implementing a system for coordination of the placement of animals. I cannot stress this enough. Get yourself some program volunteers. They can be fosters, they can be volunteers, they can pull your best friend in. I made my neighbor come volunteer with us in the very beginning, and she was my cat coordinator. But because everybody has access to this live document, you can break up the process of coordination and assign volunteers specific roles. You can have one volunteer do all your matching. You can match, so you can match as a staff person. When I first started doing this, I had a kitten coordinator, and she did all of my kitten matches. And then I had a cat and dog coordinator, and I did most of the adult animal matching, but then my coordinators took over the process. And so once I made a match, they would then notify the foster parent of the match, prepare all of the paperwork, tell me any supplies that they needed. So they did the bulk of the coordination piece of it. So really all I had to do was say, this animal goes with this person. And so they also helped me with monitoring and following up with On Deck signups. So if people posted information on Deck that we couldn't quite understand what they were asking for, or sometimes they would put maybe instead of yes or no, they would reach out and get more clarification so that we were able to do an appropriate match for them. And then also people who had been on Deck for a long time and hadn't been matched, they would also follow up with them just to make sure that they were still available. And then the other thing that is so great is everyone is literally working off of the same page. So I didn't have to send emails to my volunteers who are helping me coordinate, or staff don't have to send emails back and forth to each other, because they can see exactly where people are in the matching process. I love color codes, and so we used a color coding system. So as soon as I matched an animal, I highlighted the line yellow. As soon as they had sent the email, they did it a different color. And then when the match was confirmed and they knew when the foster was coming to pick up, they turned the line a different color. So that's how we did it. I know not everybody likes color codes, but I like color codes. So, and then the other thing that we, especially at the beginning of kitten season, when everybody really wants kittens and they haven't quite started coming in yet, is they would kind of stalk the On Deck to see when they would get matched. so eager. I could see like all my little guests on the Google sheet, like waiting to see when they got matched. And sometimes they would get to the shelter before we even had a chance to like get the email and paperwork ready because they were so eager. But that can be kind of fun for foster parents to like see all of that stuff happening and in action. So, all right. So let's talk about how we get people to buy in. So we can go to the next slide. So we all know change is hard, and getting buy-in takes a little work, but it's so worth it for your processes and your program and just kind of like your sanity and keeping everything straight that you have to keep straight. So for communication, we let fosters know a change was coming, and we did teaser emails. And we really stressed in those teaser emails the benefit to them, how this was going to impact them and make things easier for them. That's what we focused on. Then we did a detailed email explaining why the system was helpful for both our animals and for them. And so there's been a couple of iterations of On Deck, and one of them, we sent a pretty detailed email out because we were having a hard time getting people to buy in and use the system. And so it went through, and I did several charts looking at different populations of animals. So if you're interested in kittens, the old way of us emailing you and waiting to hear and like sending out a million pleas for people to take kittens, it could take up to a week to get a group of kittens into foster, and how that impacts the animal. So if they're sitting in a shelter, they're getting stressed. They're going to get an upper respiratory infection. When they have an upper respiratory infection, that actually delays their ability to have spay-neuter surgery and move into an adoptive home. It also makes it more difficult to place them in a foster home. So all of these things impact the longer it takes to move an animal into a home. With On Deck, literally, because we know you're ready, we can give a kitten can come in the morning and we can have them out of the shelter that evening. So it significantly improves the quality of life and health for kittens. And we went through each of the major populations, so cats, dogs, and gave some examples and talked through timeframes. We will share a link to that communication. And then the other thing that's included on that link is when we did our most recent iteration of On Deck, I had the teaser emails in there and a couple other things. So hopefully that will just help get your wheels turning, and you don't have to completely reinvent the wheel for communicating to your foster parents about the changes that will be coming when you implement an On Deck system. And then we did the launch email, which basically was the technical aspect of using On Deck system. So that is how we created buy-in. And then the other thing is, we definitely got some people who just wanted to complain about a change, and that's okay, because people have feelings about things. But I will tell you, the people that like sent me the longest, most complainy emails are still fostering with us 6 years, 7 years later. They are like our most awesome ringworm foster, or so sometimes people just need to complain a little bit about the change, but having cute kittens in your house or an adorable pupper is hopefully motivation enough to transition from email to putting your information on a spreadsheet. So let's talk about shaping up some of that foster behavior. You can go to the next slide. So you need to do a little bit of tough love. So here's what we did. If a foster emailed us to tell us they were available to foster, if they're like, hey, I can take we would say, awesome, here's our link to On Deck. We didn't even say, great, we'll match you. We just basically lathered, rinsed, and repeated. If you would like to foster an animal, the way you do that now is you use our On Deck system. If they told us they were interested in a specific animal, we asked that they update their information On Deck. So there has always been a little space for them to write whatever information they want to tell us. And so they could always say, I'm interested in fostering Chance. And then if everything lined up and it was a safe placement, boom, they got Chance, and they could find Chance a new adoptive home. If we emailed them and told them that they were matched with an animal and they declined to pick up because they forgot they were signed up, then we asked them to please immediately change their availability and then let them know that if it happened again, it could jeopardize their ability to participate in the foster program. One of the things that they agreed to when they participate in the program was to use the on-deck system. And so we were just holding them accountable to what they agreed to do. And even in that grandfather period, we just had to be a little tough on them to get them to switch over and use a new system. And so I know that that can feel kind of mean sometimes and a little bit scary because you don't want to alienate your foster parents. They're such a valuable resource and you don't want them to not foster because of this change that you made. But I guarantee you, if you can have a little bit of patience, let people give you their thoughts and opinions on it and help bring them along, they will come along. So that is my spiel on tough love. Let's see. Let's talk about some other uses for on deck. You can go to the next slide. Okay. This lady in this picture is Juliet, and I think she's probably fostered like 300 kittens for us. And so there's probably, she loves this pose. So there's like a ton of pictures of her like this. But anyway, she's adorable and her kittens are adorable. Okay. So other uses for on deck. Understanding your current capacity for placement. So we talked about this a little bit, but coordinating with transport, intake, and space, it really allows for an overview of placement capacity to be able to say yes, no, or maybe. For emergency placement, if you have to move a large volume, you have a hoarding case. We recently had to evacuate one of our buildings completely overnight. It lets you say, well, I definitely have enough people to support this, or nope, we need to do an emergency all call and get more people to help us. So it lets you kind of have a quicker overview of what you have ready at your fingertips to respond to certain situations. Let's see. When to ask for help. So you can also look and see, you know, I have a lot of people who are signed up for older kittens, but I don't have anybody signed up for bottle babies. Or, you know, a lot of people want to take small dogs, but where my big dog people at? So it kind of helps you figure that stuff out so you can have more targeted communication. And then the other thing we do with our targeted communication is we look at who we have waiting to be placed, and we'll say, hey, we have 10 senior cats right now who really could use your help. If you're available, please make sure that you get on deck. So that's kind of how we use on deck to expand our capacity, fill out our capacity, and coordinate with other departments. All right, let's see, other advantages. You can go to the next slide. All right, so there is a significant decreased turnaround time for foster placement. I touched on this earlier, but especially with our most fragile populations, we significantly reduced the placement time. It was taking over a week to get like moms and kittens into foster homes. I very rarely had any knowledge of availability of bottle baby fosters. Dogs, it was, I mean, everybody knows getting bigger dogs into foster is always a challenge. And so I didn't have a sense of what we could do for that population. And so it just took forever to find the right person to take in, you know, a bigger dog, no matter whether it was a perfect dog or had issues. And so on deck, I could say to my care team and my behavior team, hey, I don't have anybody signed up right now, but in your mind, like, what would it take what kind of home would it take? And then I could say, hey, fosters, here's a dog that we have that could really use your help. Here's the kind of home that it needs. Or I could say, yeah, I can get that guy into foster by Tuesday, you know? So it just really helps decrease how long it takes to move your animals through. The other thing is, again, like that improved communication, so you can be realistic and say what you have or what you need in order to move an animal into foster, because you have that information right at your fingertips. And then the other thing is, because everything is already matched up and on deck, it makes it very easy to then coordinate the support of foster placement. So matching that home with a case manager, preparing any supplies they need ahead of time because they can indicate that on deck. All of those things, knowing that it's a new foster, and so I'm gonna go ahead and send you home with the shy cat handout and make sure that I match you with a really experienced case manager, because we wanna make sure that the foster parent feels supported. Or, man, this person has fostered 30 cats for us. They don't need the shy cat handout anymore, and we can probably give them a much more difficult animal to care for, and they'll be just fine. So all of that stuff, because you have the information at your fingertips, really smooths out and improves your process and improves your customer service for your foster parents. All right, let's see. Let's talk about COVID usage. So, whoa, there were just so many more people and so many more animals that we had to organize information around. So, and then the other thing is we had to close our shelter doors, which meant that there were no more adoptions from the shelter. So foster really became the only valve for all of the animals that we wanted to get adopted and all of the animals that were from our more fragile populations. And then we needed to be able to quickly assess our ability to place those animals and then get those animals into homes. So I'm gonna go through a couple slides that have some data on it. So if you wanna go to the next slide, you can. Okay, so this kind of shows us the number of animals that we were considering for foster placement. And in 2018 and 2019, it was fairly similar, the number of animals that we were looking. And then boom, COVID hit in 2020, and you can see the number of animals that we needed to move into foster. We can look at the next slide. And then the number of people. So the graph with the red and the blue shows how many people were enrolled on deck. So not necessarily availability, but just the number of people that were on deck. And so you can see from 2019 to 2020, there was a significant increase in the number of people that wanted to help us and that we could place animals in their homes. And then if you look at the folks that said they were available to foster, again, like just a very high number of people with their information that we need to keep track of. You can go to the next slide. And then it all translated into animals placed in foster. And so if you can see that, especially in April and May, compared to the previous 3 years, we were able to place a higher volume of animals into foster. And we were only really able to do this efficiently because we had the tools in place to do it. I can't imagine us rifling through 1,000 on deck signups or 1,000 emails of people saying, I can take a dog, I can take a cat, I can take kittens, I can take anything, but I have 4 children and a parrot and a rabbit. Like, keeping all of that stuff straight without any type of tool in place, there would have been no way at all to manage all of that information. So it really helped us be really fluid and flexible with how we responded to a really quickly changing landscape. All right, so what's next? So remember how I said it's not perfect all of the time. We probably onboarded at least 1,200 new foster parents in the last few months. And so there is now this big process of shaping up their usage of On Deck. And so our freshman class is still a little shaky and aren't quite sure. So we've been doing things like monthly check-ins and asking them if they are still available and manually updating their availability for them. We have more targeted communication about the use of On Deck. And so things that I don't want to have to do forever, but I do know that when people are new to this system, their understanding of it is obviously not the same as it would be their second, third, or fourth time around fostering for us. So helping them come along and helping them use the tool the way that we really need them to, so that we can have a really proactive approach to moving animals into homes. Tracking foster parent behavior. So one of the things that the shelter software that we use, it doesn't really allow us to capture and analyze data about our foster parents in any type of really easy way. And so using these spreadsheets, I'm going to work with our developer to figure out basic things and then eventually more complex things. So basic things like, which populations get the repeat foster? Is it kittens? Is it big dogs? I mean, I have a hypothesis, but I have no data to support that. So those types of questions. Are people only fostering large dogs once? Are they foster failing, or are they just having a frustrating experience? So, and then how do we improve that experience so we retain those large dog fosters? So looking at those types of things so that we can really refine our practice and recruit and retain the people that we need the help from. And then for us, we have always kept our really highly adoptable animals in the shelter so that they're on the adoption floor and available for placement in adoption homes. But because we've had to place all these really highly adoptable animals in foster, we found that they got adopted from foster really fast, like to the point where foster parents were kind of disappointed because they only got to have the animal for a couple of days before they were adopted. And what I've noticed from the behavior of foster parents previously was that anytime we made a call for, we need to move these 40 kittens into foster homes for just a week, we had always an overabundance of people who were willing to step in and help on a short-term basis. So I'm really excited that we will be able to truly expand our program and offer a type of fostering that I think a lot of people will find very attractive, because they'll only have to have the dog or the cat in their home for, a week or two, and then they'll be off into a home. And I think that's so much more manageable for many people. Whereas before, if you took a large dog, you probably had that dog for a good month to 6 weeks. So I'm so excited to use On Deck to grow this program, to add an option for fast track fostering for foster parents. And so we can see who wants those adoption ready animals, those highly adoptable animals, and allow people to have the experience that they're looking for when fostering. And then I wanted to just let you know about a couple resources that we have through HRA. So we can go to the next slide. So one of the things that we did when we were developing our tools for capturing what animals need placement, the homes that were available to foster them, and then managing the animals and the cases once they were in a foster home. When we were developing those tools for our organization, we also developed a companion tool for other organizations to use. So it's called Foster Matchmaker. And if you go online to humanerescuealliance.org/foster matchmaker, you click on it, and then you fill out a quick form, and then we actually send you a Google Sheet that has a tab for capturing the animals, a tab for capturing the homes, and then it will actually suggest matches for you. And there's a video that goes along with it that kind of explains to you how you set it up and customize it and use the tool. And then we have online a huge shelter toolkit for other organizations, and it has webinars from transport, how to write grant proposals, virtual adoptions, all that good stuff. We have podcasts. There's an animal academy through our humane education program. And then there's all kinds of information to prepare your pet for emergency situations. So just wanted to plug those things to let you guys know that those are out there. And then we have reached the portion of our program that is questions from the audience.
Thank you so much. It seems that there's some questions about teaser emails. So could you talk a little bit more about the hoping to receive copies of the teaser emails that were sent to the fosters leading up to the launch of the new system and a copy of the launch email?
Yeah, so here, let's see, let me see if I can just share this link. Where should I share, in the chat or the Q&A?
Yeah, the chat would be great.
Okay. Okay, so on this, you will find that email that I talked about that was like timelines, why use on deck, all that stuff. And then right below that, you got to scroll down a couple pages, but it's got like our little teaser email for relaunching on deck. And there's dates on there, so you can see kind of like what our timelines were. Yeah.
Excellent. And then we have a couple of questions about the spreadsheet that you shared. So do all fosters have access to the spreadsheet? And then are they deleted when an animal is placed with them?
Yes. So when we use just the spreadsheet and not the Google form that fed into a spreadsheet, yes, the requirement to have access to the Google Sheet was that they completed orientation with us. And then once they completed orientation, we sent them the link to On Deck. And then we didn't share the link publicly. So we didn't share it on our Facebook, or we don't do any of that stuff. So really, we only like maybe once or twice had some random person from like the outside world sign up, and that was easy enough to deal with. And then, yeah, what we did is once the animal actually left the building with the foster parent, we then deleted their line from On Deck. And then when they were ready, they just had to sign up again.
Excellent. And then we have another question. How do they update their information in your database, or do you have to manually do that? And do they repeatedly enter their information every time?
So if you're going to use the spreadsheet, they will need to repeatedly enter their information, because you don't want an On Deck that's so deep that people can't even find where to actually put their name. And you don't want your staff or your volunteers to have to like rifle through like 500, 1,000 people. You want to keep it fairly condensed so that it's easy enough for you to match stuff up. So I would recommend, as soon as you make a match, that line of information is removed. So great. If you're using a spreadsheet, yes, they will have to hop back on as soon as they're ready and sign up for what they want. Some people found it a little inconvenient, but what I tried to reiterate to folks was it takes no more time than you typing this out in an email to me. And it's ultimately more helpful to all of us, and to especially the animals, if we use this system. And most people can get on board with helping animals because that's why they're there. For the using the forms, when they fill out the form, they get an email with a link to their individual form. So as long as they keep that email, they can click back on that form and just update the parts that they want to change. They don't have to refill out the form every time if they are good about saving that email. If they don't, they can always just sign up on Deck again, so they're completing a new form and a new line of data. And our spreadsheet will tell us when there's duplicate information, and we just go in and delete the line of data that was further in the past. And the other benefit about using the form is you don't necessarily have people's emails and phone numbers out there for everybody to see, but I never really had anybody complain about the fact that other foster parents could see their contact information. So it wasn't really a problem for our organization and our foster parents. But the benefit is spreadsheets just more simple, I think, when you're starting out. But the Google form gives you more privacy and allows people to only have to edit specific information that's changing regarding their specific situation.
Awesome. And then can fosters see other fosters' contact information and preferences on the spreadsheet?
So they can. If you use a spreadsheet, they absolutely can see. They can see when other people get matched and they don't. So there's that goes on, but it really was never a problem. I mean, we certainly got some emails that were like, how come you matched Susie and not me with those kittens? And we could say, well, Susie was on deck before you are, or we know Susie and Susie is able to take this population, but I promise you we have more kittens coming and you'll be matched really soon. So, or we could have conversations with people who put on deck that they only wanted a 20-pound hypoallergenic puppy. And we could say, we don't often come across that population in our organization. And so if you could expand your criteria, that would help us match you faster. So, yeah.
Excellent. We have a few more questions coming in. Do you use any volunteer foster management software along with your on-deck system?
So we don't use any volunteer management system, but we do keep our foster parents' full records and information in our shelter database. And so we create a person record for every foster parent. They get a foster association. Whenever they complete a training that would help them work with a more specialized population, we put that information in the record. If we have concerns about their ability to foster, have had conflicts with them, we will put that in their person record. That's where we kind of house all of that information.
Fantastic. How do you orientate new fosters? Is it through an email, a video orientation, and how do people sign up to be a foster with your organization?
So we have our sign-up sheet for fostering right on our website. So they fill that out and it kind of takes them through a series of questions. It helps kind of prepare their expectations for fostering. And once they complete that, I have volunteers who do this entire process for me, which is awesome. They go through and we look at some, like four of the questions are rule in or rule out. So they have to be 18 to foster for us. We do ask that they have altered animals in their home because we do place unaltered animals in foster. So we are really trying not to have more animals made in foster. And then we look at their reason for wanting to foster. So, you know, if they say something that would be concerning, then we would look at that information. But most people just are like, I want to help an animal get adopted. And we're like, cool, you're in. And then we send them a link to our online orientation. And then when they complete that, and so we use another Google form for online orientation, and we just embedded videos in that, and they have to answer a couple questions and they get to move on to the next section. Once they finish online orientation, we send them another email that welcomes them to fostering. They get the link to On Deck. They are added to our Google groups, and then they are sent links to our Facebook groups if they want to join those. So that's how the orientation process works. Right before COVID hit, we also had, for a really long time, we required foster parents to come in for an animal care orientation before they could take an animal home. And I really wanted to get rid of that for a long time. And this like really just like, let me do that lickety split. And it's worked out fine. It really has been fine. We've had tons and tons of new fosters help us get animals adopted, and it has been fine not having them come on site. Do I think foster parents probably want more information about animal care? Yes, but there's certainly ways to like teach them about that stuff without having the barrier of an on-site orientation.
Awesome. And then we had a follow-up question about the personal info. What about privacy issues? What if a foster doesn't want their info shared?
I honestly didn't have anybody that said that, but what I would suggest to them is you don't have to put your phone number on there. And if you want to create a special email account just for fostering, you can do that. So one of the things that we do require foster parents to be a part of is the adoption process for their animal. And so we do require that they put their email address on the internet. And so we tell them in the beginning, if you don't want your personal email address out on the interwebs, then we suggest that you create a special account just for fostering. And so because we had that requirement, I don't think we had a lot of issues with people being concerned about their information not being private. And I think people felt good because really it was only people within the foster community that could see like their phone number and their email address. We didn't ask them to put their physical address or anything like that on deck.
Got you. Do you remove fosters or make them inactive if they've not fostered after a certain amount of time?
So we do monthly check-ins with people who have been on deck, and if we give them a deadline to respond, and if they don't respond, then they do get removed. And if they do respond, then they update their stuff, or we have confirmed that they're still available, and then we know that they can be matched.
Okay, excellent. And then do you pre-screen foster homes before they have access to the spreadsheet?
Pre-screen in the sense that when they sign up, we review their responses, and we also look in our databases to make sure that they don't have any really concerning notes about any history that they may have had with us. But other than that, no, we don't.
And you all are trying to make it as easy as possible for people to foster, like,
right.
You said, right, with getting sort of being able to foster without orientation now. And
yeah, I mean, we have found, if someone is really willing to go through an orientation and sign up and all of that stuff, they really just want to help animals. And so I really have not had any issues with people using the information inappropriately. I've had some really like overzealous foster parents share the link like on their Facebook page, but we quickly got them to take it down. And like I said, we've had like a couple times where people from the outside world like just hopped on deck because they wanted to foster a dog or cat. But then we kind of like had a referral and we're like, cool, if you want to foster a dog, here's how you do that. So that's the only like issues we've had with it.
Got you. And then a follow-up to the unaltered animals. If you have, for example, like a male puppy with a male unaltered animal, would you allow for that? Or is that just like a hard and fast rule in your organization?
Because it can get so complicated so quickly, we just said we would really like you to have your resident animals altered. I mean, look, if they have rabbits and they want to foster a dog, like they don't have to have their rabbits altered. You know what I mean? Like we're not going to put those levels of barriers in place, but we do want to make sure if we're going to do because we don't, it becomes too complex to keep track of like, oh, you have an unaltered female cat, so we can only put female cats. Like all of that stuff just got like too complicated for us. So we just said, please, can you have your animals snootered? And then we certainly can consider things on an individual basis, right? Like I said, if you only want to foster cats and you have an unaltered dog, that's not going to be an issue. But for the most part, we do look and see if they have their animals altered, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. And it makes sense that individual basis, just going home by home and sort of if there's a medical reason or something like that. Excellent. And then how long did it take the developer to make your system with Google Forms?
So it was an ongoing process. I would say probably 6 to 9 months to get our first iteration, and then we're kind of tweaking it and making it more efficient and giving us what we need as we move along. But it definitely took a couple months to get all 3 tools to the place where we wanted it, to get the form to line up with all of the things we needed the form to line up with. Because what we did is we created a system that actually talks to each other to suggest matches. So all the information that foster parents give us has to line up with the information that we're putting in about the animals and all of that good stuff. So that's why it took so long. But I mean, you can make a spreadsheet in a day or less, right? So you don't have to be fancy to start out. You can always, you know, have level 1, level 2, and level 3 of your planning to get things going.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, and thanks for everyone who joined us this evening. If you have follow-up questions for Jennah, please feel free to email them out to us. We'll try to get to if there were questions that weren't answered, we'll try to get to those as well. Curious to hear if people start a foster on deck program, and
Yeah.
so much. Talk to y'all soon.
Thanks, everybody.